Hi, everybody. Mike Bloom here, getting you ready for another week of Australian Survivor Redemption Exit interviews. Whew, what a week. I never get tired of coming in here every 7 days to say that, much as these people never get tired, apparently, of creating scintillating, sometimes perplexing, but always entertaining drama for our eyes and ears to feast on. And this time, shall be no different as we got to experience perhaps the best week of Australian Survivor Redemption yet. And that is saying a lot. And so I got the chance to talk with all three of this week's boots in Blanche, Ben, and Simon. In retrospect, actually a great representation of kind of the spectrum of visibility that is Australian Survivor editing, where on the sort of infrared side, you have, or maybe ultraviolet, considering the purple of it all, you have someone like Blanche, who honestly, outside of her giving an idol to somebody who got voted out with said idol, we really did not know a lot about. In fact, was kind of regarded as a bit of a footnote in her own boot amidst just one of the wildest tribal councils Australian Survivor has ever seen. We'll talk, obviously, to Ben about Jackson, his number one ally, flipping on him at tribal council, someone who was just as quiet as Blanche, arguably, in the first half of the season. But then he became Davo, but then he became Dunzo. But let it not be mistaken. This man is Davo through and through, and he shows that with his personality in this interview. I will also warn you for the Ben interview. If you're susceptible to vertigo, maybe do not watch the video version of the interview, just as a fair warning. And of course, I relish any opportunity I can to talk about Simon Mee. He had some moments of redemption, as he claims. Of course, he had to have some bottomness come out in a couple of instances. And of course, the only way for Simon to go out is in a chaotic manner, such as nearly getting the first rock draw in Australian Survivor history, only for the other returnee in Brooke to relent and take him out. Obviously, will be, I think, a little bit of a taste of what will hopefully be a larger conversation with Simon once the season has concluded. But at this point, I do not want it to end anytime soon. If you missed it, check out all the coverage we did of this truly glorious week of Australian Survivor, talking the Sunday episode with Chappelle, the Monday episode with Puya, and the most recent episode with Matthew Haywood, the winner of Survivor UK, who actually has some alarmingly similar characteristics to a lot of these things that these people are doing in this season. So I really had a great time with him. Check all that out. Might have one or two more tricks up my sleeve, perhaps. I'm like Mark. I've got a big old triple-breasted jacket at this point, coming up before we come back in with the next new episode at the end of the week. So make sure you're subscribed. WeKnowGlobal.com. Again, that's WeKnowGlobal.com. And again, I just want to stop in and say how thankful I am for the support that we've gotten so far. This has truly been a wild season of the show to cover, to stop in every day pretty much and be like, okay, what happened? Why did it make sense? What does this mean moving forward? The Chizzy has been wildly volatile to reflect that. And I've just been so incredibly thankful for those of you who have showed up to check out the podcast recaps, to check out these types of interviews, as well as the, of course, really, really fantastic contestants for offering their insights into the absolute roller coaster ride that this season has been so far. So that being said, strap in and check out my interviews with Blanche, Ben, and Simon. Here we are, Blanche. Listen, certainly not something I expected by the time the episode ended. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was definitely unexpected. Everyone has said, even crew and stuff, it was definitely not my time.
Well, let's talk about what made it your time here, because, of course, chaos would be putting it mildly. There are fake idols being pulled out, real idols being pulled out, Ben and Jackson getting up and whispering to everybody. So did you get this sense as you were sitting there that things were changing, that it could be you, or were you truly blindsided when your name showed up once, let alone 4 times or 3 times?
3 times. I was completely blindsided because I was getting up and having conversations as well, which you don't see. So I'm getting up with my alliance and I'm saying to them, Ben, do not get rattled. Brooke's idol is fake. She's not letting anyone see it. She's not letting anyone touch it. She's never played one before the vote before. She's absolutely, it's fake. I'm like, stick to the plan, Ben. Stick to the plan. Just, it was either Brooke or Keely going home last night, but he got rattled because then he went around and said to everyone, what if it was your name that they were throwing out? And he just spooked it. But like you saw Jackson, bless his cotton socks, he was so beautiful when he wrote my name down, that I wasn't the vote. But then Cameron wrote my name down.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about this alliance, this newbie brigade that was trying to get these returnees out. Where did you sort of stand in it? Who were you closest with in this group? Did you feel like it was like a true alliance, or more so just sort of a marriage of convenience between a bunch of different newbies?
No, so right back when Mark does that big kapoof in that the second tribal where Kat gets voted out and he pulls up his 6 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's when Johnson and myself had the Mark train going.
Mm.
And we were like, he has got to go. That behavior was just unacceptable. So then I was already close to Caleb, Sal, not too much Sal at that stage, but I became very close to Sal. And we also had Tez. So we're like having these massive conversations about getting Mark off. And because Johnson was so close to Ben, Ben was on the Mark train as well. So we were a bunch of newbies right back from day 2 having these conversations to try and get them out. So no, we were a real tight bunch of newbies that were absolutely wanting to get those returnees out.
I'm intrigued. If Keely had gone, if you convinced Ben to stick to his guns here, let's say you do take out the rest of the returnees, did you have some sort of plan as to who you want to go to the end with out of this group, or was it more of a, let's wait and see once the returnees are gone?
I'm extremely loyal, probably too loyal for the game, and that was my downfall. I need to be a little bit more fluid, but I would have taken, so Sal, Caleb, and Cameron were my 3 closest, and I was just never going to write their name down until I had to. I would have pushed forward with them and then battle it out at the end. You have to blindside someone, but I would rather sit there and battle with them knowing that I stuck to my loyalty than take all of my own people out and sit with someone else. But yeah.
Well, let's rewind all the way back to where this journey begins, to where, as you put it, your third midlife crisis begins. So I'm curious, what got you interested in the show in the first place? How much of a fan were you, and what made you decide that this was the adventure for you?
Okay, so I'm not a fan, and I had never watched it, and I got convinced from a friend to do it. She's like, "You're so fit, Blanche. You're funny. Everyone loves you in normal life. You know, I really should think you should go on it." And I'm like, don't think so. I don't think it's for me. Anyway, I really want to build a profile for myself in doing like health panels and talking more about medicine because I'm an acupuncturist and all of those things. And she said it will help you build your profile so that you'll be able to get out and do, you know, more work for health. And I was like, why not? So I applied, and then it was like, bang, 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 off. You're in.
Oh, well, you do get in, and you are given, as you mentioned, a bit of a quick dose of reality early on here with the first of what will unfortunately be many votes that you are left out of with this cat stuff. So yeah, I'm intrigued. What was it about that vote that made you want to get on, quote unquote, the Merc train so quickly? Was it as simple as like him kind of commandeering tribal council?
It was, for me, it was like a scare tactic. I don't want to say the word bullying, but I felt bullied.
Oh, wow.
That because he stood these people up and he said, these are my people. This is my people. And there's 5 of us sitting down going, oh my God. And you've got to remember, this is our first tribal.
Yeah.
My very first tribal as a newbie. I've got this returnee out there like banging his chest like he's King Kong. So I was like, this guy's got to go because he is just going to run this whole tribe. He's got to go. So as soon as we get back, Johnson and I are like, you're on, we're doing it. So I was close with Johnson and we just got the Mark train going. Like Caleb came in and Tez, he was there with us, and then Sal, and because Johnson was close with Ben, Ben's in, and Don. Well, no, I don't know if Don was really in our alliance or with Mark. But anyway, we had a train coming for Mark.
So you mentioned Johnson. When did this relationship start? What was it that got you two on the same page so early on?
Well, it was definitely that Mark train, the thing I could pull. But Johnson and I just got along with personalities. Like, you
Mm.
know, really early on, you're talking to people about their life, and we just got along. We've got similar interests, and we were fun, and we laughed. So we just generally bonded as human beings very early. And then that happened with Mark. Mate, we were like a match made in heaven. We were like, let's do this, Blanche.
Well, then, unfortunately, you get sort of the 1-2 punch of not only losing your closest ally, but seemingly it sounds like being swapped away from your other closest allies. It's just you and Ben and Brooke. So, what was sort of your reaction from the Johnson boot into the swap? What was your plan to try to pick up the pieces of your game and put something back together?
So instantly, as soon as I knew I was in the minority going over there, but as soon as I hit that beach, Cameron came straight to me, and he was like my BFF boy. So my BFF boy over the other side was Caleb, but as soon as I went over to the other side, we just got along. And then I got along with Ash, and then I got along with Lottie because they were all in it. But it was just such a personality perfection, like just a personality match, because these guys weren't scared of the returnees. They'd already got one out, you know,
Hmm.
like they only had Sai over there. They were running the show, so they were kind of allowed to be who they are as people. And I wanted to be that person, the energy. They're like, but over here, I felt like I wasn't being my full self because I'm with a pack of people that one weren't really my type of people. They're same personalities and joking and fun and energetic. So then I just walked straight into this beautiful little bunch of amazing humans and had the best time.
So you mentioned Caleb. I'm curious because at the merge, there's a fun line, right? Of like, who would have thought that Caleb and Blanche would be the showmates of the season? So talk to me a bit more about this dynamic.
So Caleb and I, we hit it off straight away on the island because everyone jumped on the island and then everyone scatters off, and it was just me, Caleb, and Don. And so, you know, we're all talking and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe night 3 or 4, it is freezing out there, like ridiculously cold. And Caleb came down my end, and, you know, we all start spooning, and it was just a little match made in heaven. He made the nicest bed for us because it was just so bad. And anyway, so we became very close.
Well, someone that you were not particularly close with that remained on your tribe in the swap was you had Ben, you had Brooke. Brooke, you attempt a couple times to follow in the jungle, ends up, not working out considering that she finds another idol. But talk to me a bit about this dynamic because it seems like you were firmly on the Merc train, as you mentioned, from that cat vote. Was Brooke part of that, or did you feel like you had something different with her?
So Brooke, I spoke a lot about personal stuff on the island, so I really confided in her on the island about life, and her and I were actually quite close, but we never worked together.
Hmm.
And it's definitely probably a regret of mine because I was so fixated on getting these returnees out as much as I could, and I knew that she was going to be a challenge beast after merge. So I really wanted to stay loyal to my newbies and get her out. So
Hmm.
when we went straight over to tribal swap, and I hit it off with the bunch, Asha, Kim, and Lottie, I'm straight to them. We have got to get Brooke out because if you get Brooke back over to Mark after merge, mate, that is a nightmare. So I just wanted to get out.
And that was music to Asha's ears. She will take and run
Yeah.
with it, to put it mildly. So talk to me a bit more about this relationship because it sounds like you were sort of close with everyone in that group, but we really got you and Asha together. What was it about her that had, as we'll see, you confiding in her a very important piece of information later on?
I just trusted her because she is so authentic. Like when we would talk, I genuinely felt like she was being honest with me. She's raw like I am. Like everyone would say to me, Blanche, you're the most honest person on this island. And that was in detriment to me in my game. You don't be honest in Survivor. But Asha is a very honest, straight up person, and I love that about her because that's who I am. You know, I needed to have a person that was so loyal like me and a straight shooter. So we were just like two little peas in a pod.
So let's get into everything that happened around this idol. So you get the scroll in the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a sweet treat at the end of this. So before you bring Asha in, how long were you trying to figure out what that clue was or where the idol was without trying to look too suspicious?
So I definitely knew it was the shelter. Like the riddle
Mm.
was pretty obvious. I don't know. I think I was doing it for maybe an hour or so. I'm like leaning over here. It was just, oh my God. I look back now and I'm like, people must have been like, what is Blanche doing? It was so obvious. And I'm very short and I'm very blind. And I'm just like, I wonder if it's up higher. And I couldn't make it that obvious to get up taller. And because I just loved Ash, I just knew I would go straight to her.
So then she ends up finding this, and you make a very, especially in hindsight, unique decision to have her hold on to the idol. Where did this come from? Was it out of just, hey, you found it, I'll let you hold on to it? Were you trying to strategize around who held on to it for the time being?
So it was just a massive rookie mistake. Super inexperienced. If it ever happened to me again, I'd get it out of her bag within 3 seconds. So we're having a conversation about putting our bags next to each other and she was just going to drop it over. But all of a sudden, we had to go to a challenge. So we didn't get time to do it then. Then we came back and we lost. So we're straight into tribal scramble. And we just didn't get the bags together and everyone's running around. It was just, honestly, we just didn't get our shit together and I didn't enforce it. I should have
Mm.
been onto her going, Ash, get that idol in my bag, get that idol. But I was just caught up in the moment and I was like, nah, she's not going home tonight. And I trusted her. You know, I was like, I'll just get it off her tomorrow. No big deal. But then when we get to tribal, I didn't know the rules. I didn't know if I could, I still don't know the rule. Am I allowed to ask for the idol off her after she's been voted out?
No, you can no longer do that. It's happened in the past, but I believe they've said now you can't. You could have gotten it from her during tribal council, but once the final votes were read, she could not give you anything.
Right. Okay. There you go. And I didn't know, so I didn't ask. And then I'm like, if I ask, then it's going to be public knowledge. Do I want everyone to know anyway? But it would have been better having the idol than not having the idol. So anyway, it was just an absolute kerfuffle and a massive mistake.
Well, to be fair, as you mentioned, you felt like things were locked up to take out either Brooke or Ben. You had no
Yep.
idea about this Beauty and the Beast that were forming to rule the day. Give me your reaction to this. Was there anything in hindsight that you were looking back on of, okay, maybe there is something forming that I'm yet again on the outs of?
You definitely have like a slight feeling, but the biggest thing for me was when Brooke pulled out her idol. I immediately said to myself, she doesn't want Ben to go home. Something's happening here. So if I had experience like a returnee, I would have gone, okay, I just need one moment, David. And I would have stood up Cameron, Lottie, and Ash and said, I have an idol. Let's play the idol. And I would have done a 50-50 shot on Ash and Lottie because I knew that they were the leader of the pack. So they're going to go for either of those two girls. I don't know which one I would have played it for. To be honest, we would have had a group discussion about that. But that is a huge thing in hindsight that a returnee player has the confidence to go, because as soon as she brought it out, I'm like, there's no way she's going to let Ben go home. Something's going on.
If this group ended up going to another tribal council before the merge, did you feel like you were in trouble? Were you trying to put things into motion to prevent being the next one to go if you had lost again?
Absolutely, definitely. I was definitely having discussions with Loz.
Okay.
Yeah, I would, because as soon as I hit the island, I went straight to Loz. You know, we're the same age. We've both been through messy divorces, and you know, it was our redemption stories. So I really wanted to connect with her as well. So I was building a relationship with her. So I was putting into other steps. Of course, now Cameron, Lottie, and I have a massive conversation the next morning after Ash is voted out, and you know, we call ourselves the bottom up, and we have this alliance going. But it was definitely, and I'm also at this point talking to Simon. You know,
Okay.
so I'm having conversations with Simon. I'm asking him advice. You didn't see any of that. So I was building a relationship with Sai as well.
So we get to the merge here, and it's interesting you say bottoms up because unfortunately, Blanche, through your boot here, you end up, being in the majority at least for this Mark vote, but you get left out so many times. You get left out of the Lottie vote. Obviously, the whole Mark kerfuffle happens, as you mentioned. Talk to me a bit about that. How did that make you react as you kept going back time and time again, and all the plans you had thought ended up kind of blowing up in your face every time?
So frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like you're in control, but you're out of control at the same time. I just felt like they were picking off every person that was getting close to me. I was like, I had Kat, then I had Johnson, then I had Tez, then I had Ash. It was like, honestly, every single time someone got really close to me, it was like flicking off. So it's definitely frustrating. I was getting ridiculously frustrated, was be the word for me.
Did you have to feel like you adjusted anything? Were you learning things along the way every time you were left out of a vote?
Definitely, you're trying to still build connections. But for me, what the most frustrating part was my alliance, a couple of them were like doing this whole double agent thing. So
Hmm.
I could see them, going over and reporting. And like I had a massive fight with Caleb about it. And I'm just like, can you just not tell them the truth? Like, I get you want to play the double agent, but just don't tell them the truth. Make stuff up. And then things like Sal would say to me, I can't talk to you for too long. I don't want them to see me talking to you because my game was just too obvious.
Hmm.
And I was trying not to be. So the day that I got voted out, that day I actually had a big chat with Keely and Brooke about flipping. And you didn't see that?
Really?
Yeah. I said to them, I'm at the well. I'm with Brooke and Keely at the well. And I said to them, girls, I know I'm on the bottom of my alliance and I'm seriously thinking about coming over to you guys. They're like, open arms, Blanche.
Were you legitimately pitching that to them, or were you trying to like catch them in something?
100%. I was bored. I was so bored at this stage because even though I knew I had a couple of tight people in that alliance, Ben and Jackson were just annoying me because Ben had hardly played the game, had hardly had any game chats with me until day 18. And now all of a sudden he's a part of the Beauty and the Beast and he think he's got power. So
Mm.
straight after merge, he went into merge with this King Kong attitude. And I'm just like, dude, you haven't even been playing the game. I was on the island every single day with Ben. And it was not until day 18 that he finally had a game chat with me. And I kept asking him, Ben, we need to talk about the game. Not yet, Blanche. Not yet. Not yet. He just was, it was so frustrating. And then I get to merge and he thinks he's running the show. So
Yeah.
that's why on that day, I'm like, you know what? I am so sick of Ben. And this, so I go to Keely and I know that I know I'm on the bottom of my own alliance
What made you decide not to flip at the end of the day?
because I stupidly believed my alliance.
Mm. I mean,
I
what?
stupidly believed we were going to do the split on Brooke and Keely, and one of those two were going home. I trusted them.
Well, I have to ask, speaking of Ben, I'd be remiss not to ask your reaction to when he said, quote, unfortunately for Blanche, her game awareness in this game of Survivor is that of a fart. Is this representative of the way you two sort of acted around one another during that latter part of the game?
Ben and I describe it as had a like a brother sister relationship. We had
Hmm.
some really good times, but we had some really bad times as well. And he and I had a massive fight after tribal swap, and he just had it in for me after that. So we would goof around, but underlying, he had it in for me. And because of my strong personality, he just couldn't manipulate me enough. And that's why he has said to me, I voted you out, Blanche, instead of Lauren, because Loz was easier to manipulate than you are. And I was like, thanks, Ben. Great. Awesome.
Wait,
So
so
good.
the fight was after the swap or after the Asha tribal council? When did you get in this fight with him?
No, it was after the tribal swap.
What was it about?
It was day 8 after tribal swap. I can remember it. And I don't want to talk what it was about,
Okay.
but it was an absolute doozy. And from there on in, he and I were very fractured.
Oh my God. Well, thank you for bringing all of this to light. I mean, the last thing I want to ask is because you've illuminated so much about this experience, what has it meant for you. It's very clear going in. This ended up being wildly beyond your expectations. But like you said, it seems like you're ready to sort of embrace any opportunity that does come your way. As you mentioned before, you like to showcase like how you can make these changes no matter what point you are at in your life. So how do you look back on another very formative experience that you just had?
Do you mean like moving forward
Yeah, or
into
just like
like
looking back, like how do you look back on such a major life experience as you've gotten to
yeah.
not only have on the island, but now get to have watching back your island experience as well.
Yeah, look, I have made some really lifelong friends, which I think is, the most beautiful take home from this. I would never have met these people if I had never gone on Survivor. So that is amazing. And because we went through this unique experience, you get to talk to them about it. Like you need to talk about it. You need to debrief, which is a massive thing. And you can't do that with someone that hasn't been on it.
Right.
So that's a definite big thing for me. And the thing was, I survived without comfort. I was in massive stressful situations and I didn't have the normal life comforts to get me through it. So it's overindulging. We overindulge in food. We overindulge in phones. We overindulge in everything. So it was more like I can live on simplicity. And how beautiful is that? And I do have people here that genuinely love me for me.
Yeah, but listen, you were more than happy to jump to get that espresso as soon as you got that torch stuff. So don't get it wrong. Listen, it's going great, but you got those creature comforts, and you're killing it in the looks department on the journey. Like you were ready to jump into the fully luxurious lifestyle you left behind.
100% the espresso martini. We had been talking about that on the island for so long because one, I was dying for a coffee and alcohol. So we were like, we should have an espresso martini when we get out of here. So all of us, like a few of us girls, were like, can't wait for an espresso martini. Alcohol and coffee mixed together. Perfect.
Well, you were even more delightful than an espresso martini. Get a chance to talk with you, especially again, getting to illuminate. I think a lot of things that we were not necessarily seeing from your perspective, specifically some of these relationships. I think it puts things a little bit more in line as to the moves that you were making, especially the stuff that you were doing that we were not necessarily privy to. So thank you, Blanche, so much for shining a light not only on your game but for being such a shining light in general, like the disco ball you wore on your shirt.
Yes, exactly right. Thank you. I appreciate those words. I really do. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you so much again, Blanche. All the best to you and yours. I cannot wait to see what happens with you next. You take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ben, I need to get an important clarifier out of the way right now. Am I speaking with Ben or am I speaking with Davo? Who's
Davo.
sitting down?
Davo.
Davo,
Okay.
you've been Davo ever since basically that time in Samoa.
Yeah. So funny story about that. When I played AFL at Adelaide, my nickname was Benny Davis. My name's Ben Davis.
Yeah.
Nicknames aren't meant to be longer than your actual name. And so I tried to call myself Mad Dog. And that kind of got a little bit of legs. And then my now wife and girlfriend, came over and visited when I first moved over. So we were doing long distance. She was staying in Sydney. And everyone was like, she's more of a mad dog than you. So she got the nickname Mad Dog, and I was back to Benny Davis. I'm like, what the hell? And so now I'm running around talking in third person, and everyone's like, who are you calling Davo? I'm like, me. And they're like, you have something wrong with you, don't you? And I was like, yes, many things. So Davo made his way onto the screens in the jungle of Samoa. Do-rag Davo got a run. But yeah, so that's how we got to Davo.
Well, listen, you were certainly not a mad dog on your way out, but I imagine your mind was reeling, to say the least, of everything that went down. So sort of walk me through your initial thoughts, because obviously you're also going to have Jackson sort of self-identify as being the one to do it, but like, what is going through your head when that fourth Ben vote turns around?
Honestly, it hit because I was kind of getting a little bit of a vibe from Jackson towards the end. And when it hit, I was like, well played, man. Like I separated emotions from the game. It's such a complicated and complex game. It's such a complex game in the sense that like emotion does mix in with decisions. And it's this such a delicate balance of, do I go with emotion here? Do I go with strategy here? Because emotion, we're all human beings. It's part of who we all are. And so I knew that there was Jackson at the end, and I said, dude, you got to do what you got to do. Like, it's a game. I understand that. My mindset going in was I'm going to stick true to who I am and my values, and I'm going to play as Ben or Davo, and I'm gonna do what I like doing in life, which is sticking by my people, making people laugh, making people happy. But yeah, I felt no anger, no frustration or anything. I was just happy to be a part of something which was honestly life changing.
Well, you mentioned getting a vibe from Jackson. When and how was that happening? Because obviously we'll find out at some point, like when he made the decision to vote you out. But were you getting something off of him even before that?
No, no, no. It was. I'm talking like the last 5 seconds. Like
Wow.
before it came, it turned around. Like I was like, I don't know what it was. It was like my spidey senses were tingling. So like I could feel something like wrong. So I was like, should I quickly check if I am Spider-Man? Because I can feel something's off here. And then yeah, it turned around and I was like, damn. But nothing but love and respect.
Well, let's get to the center of your web here in the form of Jackson. So I'm curious, leading up to this, what was your relationship? It seemed like the two of you were number ones, but what was that dynamic like?
Yeah, it was crazy. Like I vibed with Jackson from the start. There's moments where we crossed on the mat and I was like, "You good, boy?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I want to work with you." And so we kind of started building this relationship before we even got to be on the same tribe. Like we give each other the eyes. Like you'd be like, you walk past him on the mat, and I'd be like, "You're Jackson," and I'd be like, like just give him a little look. And so um that dynamic was awesome. I loved it. Like we both listened to each other's opinions. Jackson was really smart. He knew the game and knew sort of the right moves to make. So we just sort of bounced off each other. Like there was a moment when we had control of the tribe after merge and we were running around. We didn't have any script. We were just bouncing off each other, talking to someone that we wanted to get like to vote for someone or something. And it was just like clockwork. Like it was crazy. We just fitted in like a perfect puzzle piece with each other. So yeah, that dynamic I absolutely loved.
So, if this vote had gone through the way you expected, which was for Brooke to go, I'm curious to hear about what you thought your endgame plans were, because there was this talk, obviously, in the past couple episodes, right, about the Beautiful Five, about Jackson talking to you about the fact that, hey, if these returnees are gone, we're the next up. So was it going to be just cleanly picking returnees off, or were you going to mix and match a little bit, turn on some of these fellow newbies once Brooke had left?
Yeah, so I was keen to get Brooke done and Simon,
Mm,
and then my N3 I was thinking Sally and Jackson.
okay.
So Sally loves cactuses and her brother's name is Jackson. And Jackson's best mate growing up was Ben, a kid named Ben. So I was like, this is
This
like
is
I'm looking
weird.
up and all the planets are like in line. I'm like, you guys seeing what I'm seeing? I'm like looking up through my telescope. I'm like, I'm seeing everything line up perfectly here. And so I was thinking, get rid of Simon and Brooke, take out the challenge aspect. Me and Jackson would then dominate the challenges. And then I backed us to get Keely on our side and then flip one other person of the newbies to vote with us and then just slowly sidestep my way through with Jackson and end up in the final two. Um, Organization and preparation is not one of Zavo's strong suits. So it was hard doing that stuff off of no sleep and no food, but yeah, didn't have to worry about it in the end.
Well, you mentioned Simon. I'm so interested to hear about this relationship because you form Beauty and the Beast, and then he betrays it with all the Mark stuff, but then he votes for Brooke that one time, like you said, but he doesn't vote for Brooke the last time that you say. So, talk to me a bit about this. Did you feel like by the time you were voted out that you had lost trust in him entirely, or was there still a spark there?
Uh, yeah, I couldn't really take anything Simon said for any value after that. Like
Mm,
the way he flipped around so much. Um, there's a moment on the beach where at night me and Jackson were listening to him come and talk to us. Um, it was when I told Jackson that he works harder than a one-armed man in a fan factory
yeah.
trying to read paper. He had a spiel for like 30, 40 minutes to us, and me and Jackson were like, this man. He's elite at the game though. His ability to like talk to people, like even when he's voted for the other side, like flipped, his ability to then get back in and somehow find a way into that alliance again it's honestly crazy to watch him work like that. And it was really cool to see it up close. But yeah, after I don't think I was going to work with him too much if I were to stay in any longer.
Well, let's rewind a little bit to the first half of your game because you talk at one point when you start this real crusade against Mark about how, like, listen, you taught us everything we need to know. Now it's time to turn on you. So I'm curious because we did see a lot of you in the pre-merge. What was sort of your approach for that first half of the game? Was it as sort of like keep your head low, stay quiet as the edit indicated?
So at the start, I was like, I just want to build genuine connections. Like my strong suit is my social game, talking to people, getting to know people. And so I was like, I'm just gonna make friends. And so that's what I did. And mix that. So I wasn't making any big moves then. And then mix that with I very early had 10 ulcers in my mouth and my wisdom teeth coming through. So I was in a world of hurt. I was like in so much pain. And I couldn't move my jaw. So like there's a moment you see when Keely walked over to me morning after tribal council and she's like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, yeah, I feel good. Like, I couldn't move my mouth. So I couldn't talk. And in a game where talking is everything and being able to build relationship trust and strategize with your mouth, I could not move my mouth. And so therefore it was a bit of a hindrance.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, obviously we talk throughout Survivor history about like the reasons why people got quieter edits. I didn't ever think there was a medical reason in Survivor history until now. So I'm happy you gained your voice in many ways.
Yeah. Thankfully I got my voice. I did all my confessionals were it wasn't like I hit merge and then it was like I'm gonna change who I am. Like
I wanted to ask about that because yeah, like until like last week we're like, where did this guy come from? So was that the sort of the personality you brought the entire time, or was it like, okay, I'm feeling comfortable, I'm having some power, now Davo's coming out?
No, that's who I was the whole time. That was I was Davo from the start. Like I talked in third person from the start. I actually introduced myself on the mat. Dave was like, white hat, green shirt, how you feeling? And I was like, first of all, Dave, I'm gonna stop you right there. I refer to myself in third person as Davo, so don't get confused when I call myself Davo. I'm actually talking about me. I do have something wrong with me in the head, but that's okay. And so I was that from the start. Like that's who I am, unapologetically. I had many nicknames out there. One of them was Donnie from the Wild Thornberries. Like
Yeah, the wild boy. Yeah.
Yeah. That was me. Like there was one point where I, with my ADHD, was running rampant. Like I couldn't sit still. I was hacking down trees, walking around, and like people would laugh at me because they're all like laying down, and I'm like going around, and they're like, "Oh, Ben's going to chop something again. Oh, Ben's dragging back half a tree again." Like I was just doing so much shit and being crazy, but that was who I was from the start.
Well, let's talk about your game accessing another gear when the swap happens and Beauty and the Beast forms. How did this come together? Who were you approached by? Because it seems like you mentioned your values before. You know, you tell Jackson and Simon, like, I'm really feeling good about this. How did it all come together?
So me, Jackson, and Simon got together and we were like, "Hey, we're big dudes. Like, we're going to be targets. Let's be targets together, friends." And so we became friends. And then Simon used his connection with Loz from that tribe to bring her in. And then obviously with a returnee player in Brooke, she came in as well with Simon. And yeah, we had this one night on the beach where we just all clicked. Like it was all of our, like the way we saw the game, the way we saw other players, the way we sort of our values connected. Like we were like so connected that it wasn't even funny. So we actually didn't even have many big meetups after that. It was like we all knew we were on the same page and we were just locked in.
Well, maybe one discrepancy for that is actually the vote after the Asha vote, right? When you're debating, okay, we might, if we lose, we get Keely and Sally over on our side. We can get rid of Keely. It seemed like you were really torn about throwing it. We see from that challenge, obviously you don't. You were pulling a boat with your freaking teeth. Was this a decision that you all made before the challenge, or were you just like, no, I put my foot down, I'm not throwing this?
It was getting thrown around a lot it was getting thrown around a lot, Mark, and I I just can't help myself in challenges. Like the competitiveness comes out of me, and I'm like, you're not beating me. I am giving this my everything because I feel like that would be against who I am. Like if I were to throw a challenge just to get my way, like that's not what I'm about. So yeah, I when we did the challenge, yeah, I decided to pull the boat through my teeth.
Well,
Obviously, the ulcers were gone at that point.
yeah, I would say it might cause some more actually as a result of that rope burn.
Literally.
Well, even though you pull a boat into the merge, someone who does not get pulled into the merge is Faith. And this is a relationship we really didn't get the chance to see. There's some like spare, conversations the two of you have from other
Yeah,
sides
yeah.
of the mat. But yeah, talk to me more about this. And what was your reaction when you enter the merge and find out not only is she gone, but it's at the hands of Mark?
Yeah, so Faith was like my sister out there. Like we would sit up like talking about her kids and her husband. I'd talk about Ruby, and we would just like we got to the point where we would sit around the campfire, piecing ourselves laughing. Like she was so funny, and we got along so well. And she was a good player. Like she ended up telling Mark that she wouldn't take him to the end, which ended up being her undoing. But when I saw that she got voted out, it was a shock to me. It obviously hurt me a little bit, but I was like, I can see how that would happen. And yeah, but yeah, like we were so tight out there. She was definitely one of my closest alliances, if not the closest for the start of the game.
Well, let's stay on the Mark topic here because after this Lottie vote, this is when you emerge as the Mark Slayer. So where did this come from? Had you had this sort of be in your bonnet about Mark all the way back from like the Baron 1.0 days? What made you decide in this moment, like, okay, the newbie revolution starts now?
So it was a tribal the night before when Simon actually says, you can't sit there in a final four, vote out one of the players in that four, and then call that a big move. Like if you want moves on your resume, you need to do it now. And we still had what 12 people. We had 12 people at merge at this point or whatever. And I woke up the next morning. It was bouncing around in my brain the whole night. Like I barely slept. I reckon I got like an hour of sleep that night.
Oh.
And then I'm on the hammock in the morning with Jackson, and I'm looking at him, and I'm staring at him, and he knows like something. I'm thinking about something, so I'm looking at him like this, and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Mark, I want him gone." He's like, "Mark?" I'm like, "Mark." And so I built these connections with everyone, and I was like, "Let's run it. Let's run it. Like, what have we got to lose?" And so I did what I do with everything in life, and I go all or nothing, like 100%. And so I was like, I want Mark to see how bad everyone wants him out of this game. I want to start a revolution against the returnees, and to do that, I want all votes on Mark. I was like, I don't care about the split. I want to dump on this man. I want him to see, and I want the returnees to see that we mean business. And I knew there was a split there, obviously, but I was like, that's not my style. I know it's the smart gameplay, but I'm like, that's not me. I'm all in, baby.
Well, all that being said, though, I imagine that when Mark is, reaching into his jacket and like showing that he has what was then a fake idol, but it turns out he had a real one to everybody,
Yeah.
that could have spooked a lot of newbies. Obviously, produces a lot of whispering.
Yeah.
How tough was it to keep everyone on board to pile all those votes onto Mark in that rich vote?
I think it wasn't hard because I had built such good relationships with everyone. Like I love everyone on this season. Like they're all such amazing, beautiful human beings. And I made sure that they knew how much I appreciated them out there. And so if you build that connection, there's more trust. And so when he pulled that out and everyone was like, "What? Oh my God, he's got an idol." I was like, I told a couple of the others, I'm like, why would he pull it out before the votes happened? Like it's obviously a fake. Like he wouldn't, otherwise he'd just play it. And then he reached into another pocket and pulled out a real idol. And then poor Rich, poor Rich. Oh, Richie Rich, cash flow. He was standing in a different country. That's how far away he was from the action, and he still copped a stray. So my poor man's ended up getting sent home, which was, I felt so bad after that, but started the revolution.
What was your relationship with Mark like after that? Because you do get him on the next vote, but we see things like this triangle offense. We see, you
Yeah,
and him talk, and both of you in confessional are like, yeah, I don't believe a word of what the other guy is selling. So were you trying to work something with him, or was it only just to, let the time pass and not actually pay him any mind?
yeah. Let the time pass. Definitely. We got back to trouble that night, and me and Mark had a conversation. He was like, "That was crazy." I was like, "That was insane. What the hell was that?" And I was like, "That was so much fun." And he's like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I actually want to work with you. Like, I want to work with people who actually want to make moves and do things and strategize and try and do stuff instead of just coasting." And I was like, "Thank God. I've been wanting to work with people like this for so long. And to have you say that to me makes me so happy because now people aren't going to expect us working together, but we can do that." And he's like, 100%. And he walked off, and Jackson came up to me and said, "What did he want?" I said, "We're voting him out next tribal council."
And you did, for what
And I
it's
did.
worth. Yeah, and it's at
Well,
least.
Caleb did technically.
Well,
Caleb was the mastermind.
I want to ask about that because you seem to be feeling a certain way when you come back to camp after that Mark vote, and everyone's like, "Great job, Caleb." Now
Yeah, yeah,
you do eventually say like, "Listen, I'll take credit for it where it matters." But how were you sort of feeling in this? Good news, you got rid of the guy who has been leading the
yeah,
charge
yeah.
against you. Bad news, another person's taking the credit for it.
Yeah. Well, like, so that's the funny thing. Like in the time, I'm like, because I haven't watched Survivor before, so I don't really know the ins and outs. But when I got back, I was like, I'm literally a puppy. Like I need to be told that you love me, and I need my like head patted. Like that's the way I work. And so I was just looking for one person to say, "Ben, well done on starting this last time," or something like that. And yeah, watching it back now, I'm like, dude, the way Caleb navigated that and had Mark trusting him so much to the point that he was his biggest blind spot and he refused to look at it, was insane. And the ability to do that is just so next level. So like full credit to Caleb for doing that. And like someone was going to pull the Mark train at some point. Like someone was going to get in the driver's seat of the train and leave the station, and he was just waiting for the right time for that to happen. And yeah, made it work.
Well, you talk about watching it back. I'm curious because we have gotten a few comments from the past few episodes about, people like Cameron and Laws saying like, "Oh, I don't really like Ben when he's with the stuff he's saying now that he's in power." Were you aware of this at all? Did you feel like you were acting any sort of way when you finally accomplished your goal and were now, the leader of the newbie resistance?
Yeah, no, I some of the power heavy weighs the crown on those who wear it, and my head got a little bit heavy at times, but I didn't really change too much. Like my biggest thing was I would bring the newbies, all of us newbies together, and we would have a chat. I'd say, "I want to hear about what you guys want to do. Like, what move do you guys want to make? Like, I'm open for suggestions. I want this to be like a collaboration. Like I don't, because that's what they were sick of. They were sick of a tyrant that would make the calls. So in pretty much all the scrambles, I made sure that I got opinions from everyone and did all that. But yeah, I think they lent into the sort of character I became when talking to the returnees, just to sort of go along with it. I'd like to think that I didn't change too much. But yeah.
Well, you talk about a scramble. We got to talk about a very memorable one that we experienced this week with everything happening with Brooke and Keeley and the real idol and the fake idol. So you are able to successfully scuttle the votes onto Blanche. I need to hear all of your thoughts about this methodology. First, like, thinking that, okay, we'll still put the votes on Brooke, but what made you decide to shift from Keeley to Blanche specifically?
In my head, I was like, worst case scenario, even though I know in my head, I was like, Brooks is fake. Brooks' idol is fake. I was like, in my head, worst case scenario, all three idols are real and I go home. And so I was like, I need to make sure that there's a safety net for me. And so instead of banking on the fact that one of them are fake, just for safety, I had to move it to someone else. And that person in the split second happened to be Blanche. So I just made the decision then and there, and I was like, I need to make sure I look after myself here, just in case that all three are real.
Why Blanche? I know she talked to me a little bit, yesterday. She said that the two of you had like a big blow up, right after the swap. So was it just the fact that you were never on the same page, or was there another reason behind targeting her?
Nah, no reason, no reason. It was just in the moment thing that a decision that I made. Um, I guess, I guess there was it wouldn't have been a negative effect of her going home. I guess my subconscious was like, if I lose Blanche tonight, even though I love her, I'm like, it's not gonna affect my game too negatively.
Hmm.
Um, and she, I guess she wasn't like we loved each other. Like she's an absolute weapon, but we weren't really in the game. We didn't really work together too much. So I was like, it's probably one that won't really hurt.
So I want to finish things off by talking about, your redemption coming into this, right? Which was to talk
Yeah,
about your AFL career and getting your chance to be on the proverbial field. You say in this most recent episode that, this is the proudest you've ever been of
yeah.
yourself. And obviously, unfortunately it's set up right before this massive betrayal. But how do you look back on this experience? You called it life-changing, but given especially the potential you felt you had in a competitive environment, what did this mean for you?
I guess in my AFL career, it was always, you know, I always doubted myself. That was a big thing, and it's a big thing for my whole life. I've always doubted myself. I've always been the first person to beat myself down if I do something wrong, or if I forget something, or if like everything in life. Like I'm always my worst enemy. And there's always that voice saying, like, I told you so, I told you couldn't do this, I told you couldn't do that. And this was the first time in my life where I went 35 days in the jungle with rations, eating next to nothing at all, um, sleeping in the jungle, no bed, no nothing. It was the first time in my life where I could actually turn to that voice in my head and say, no, 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 I'm proving you wrong. Like I'm showing you what I can do and what I'm capable of. And that was the moment for me that, like as you can see in the last episode, I get really emotional. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, I can honestly say I've never felt more proud of myself than that moment there. And it's like it's sad, it's beautiful, but sad as well that I've never truly, I reckon, loved myself until that point. And it
Yeah.
was just incredible to have that experience on something that has changed my life is, well, the main reason it's changed my life is, yeah, amazing.
Well, that's so beautifully said. And look, I will say that some of my favorite people to watch on Australian Survivor, especially, are those who come in not really knowing about the game and like fall in love with it. And it's very clear, like you said, you're an all or nothing type of person. And so I really enjoyed, especially again these past couple of weeks, of Davo really like taking
Yeah,
the reins again. Like, look at considering what Mark was doing up to that point. It takes
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
to be able to take him out of the game, which you were able to do so alongside a bunch of these other people. So I had such a great time getting to not only watch you over the course of this season, but getting a chance to talk with you as well to get some insight into all this stuff. This is an absolute pleasure, whether, you're Ben, you're Davo, you're Mad Dog, no matter who it is, I'm happy to talk to you regardless.
Mike, you're a king. Thank you so much. And yeah, I have well and truly fallen. I love this game. I love this game. It's
Oh,
so good. But yeah, thanks for chatting to me, King.
of course. No, thank you, King. All the best to you and yours. Thank you so much again, Ben. You have a good one.
Thanks, Mark. See you, bro.
Simon, what are we doing here? We were supposed to go to Rocks. This was all supposed to be preventable, but alas, you're here once again. How are you doing right now? Obviously, this was such a meaningful experience to you, but how did it feel
Yeah.
getting to watch it all back for the third time?
Yeah, it was definitely pretty special. I think like where I am right now is one of reflection and gratefulness and gratitude. I'm more thinking back over, I'm retired now, Mike. This is very liberating. Like I'm done with
Are,
Survivor. So like,
is it like because Harry told me he was that as well, unless there's a AU versus the world season.
no,
Would you do
I don't
that?
think. No, I don't think this is. I think I'm done. I put my family through enough, and they've been very supportive of me. But it's now time to give back. So I'm yeah very reflective of like the journey that I've had over 3 seasons, 100 plus days, and yeah, I'd like to think that I did the fans proud. Like because I know that my spot out there could have been one of theirs. And, I made the most of every single day, of every single moment, and just did it in my own way, that I'm absolutely unapologetic for. So I've been I'm very grateful for everything that I've kind of achieved, and the receptions I've had from the fans, and I've been a character that people have loved to cheer for or cheer against, and it's been very special.
All that matters is that we're cheering at the end of the day.
Exactly, that's it.
Well, now that we're at this period of reflection, it's only appropriate that we reflect back on these 100+ days. So I have to start with where things ended. Did you think things were going to go to rocks when you find out that the vote is tied between you and Laws, not Keely, as you may have thought? Did you anticipate anyone from your side flipping, or did you think you were about to make Australian Survivor history by being involved, or not being involved, I should say, in this rock draw?
Yeah, I really did think it was going to rocks. I feel like, the other side, they were very, very true about not having anything to lose. And I felt like from our side, especially for Brooke and Keely, we had worked our butts off to get off the bottom of that. And we very much so overstayed our welcome and just, hung around, to use an old reference from Heroes versus Villains, the turd that couldn't be flushed. We were still there. And so to get to that point where it's even if we had the immunity necklace on our side with Brooke, it was a 40-60 shot that we had to progress through. So I did think it was going to rocks, and on paper, I just didn't think that we would go there. I don't think it makes sense to work so hard to end up back in a minority at that point, regardless of it was worth. I think it was worth risking someone's game to go, but Brooke obviously. I mean, she was protected, but she had other motivations, and sometimes when there's an opportunity to strike, you have to do it. But there's an element that I knew it was a big fib, but there was an element of I didn't really know how it was going to go down. There is every chance that I go to pull a rock or however this mechanism is kind of coming around, and the producers just let it fly just to see how it plays out for TV. So I knew that I couldn't technically, but there could have been a reality where, hey, let's just see what happens here. And if he does or doesn't, and if this comes unraveled. My plan was to play dumb, to be like, what do you mean I can't take two?
Yeah.
And just see how that goes and put on that classic dumb Simon face as I try to process everything and, to take my time to work out what's going on. But then, we were kind of robbed of that opportunity before we got there.
I'm so curious because you did seem incredibly understanding when Brooke starts, saying it was her and explaining the reasoning. If the roles were reversed, if you had the necklace and Brooke was involved in the tie, would you have done the same, or were you going to force rocks there? Were you locked in with her?
I was locked. I think I was motivated to move on Brooke at 7. I don't think that, and she was probably motivated. She probably realized that as well, working backwards, that she took the opportunity and took the shot when she could to have that moment.
That's it. So if you 4 had survived that vote, this side, you still would have taken the shot at Brooke next vote.
I feel like yes. There was that was as the only one really standing in my way there. I just think that it was a consideration, and I knew that Jackson had even that vote before when we took out Ben, Jackson was like, it's got to be Brooke. It's got to be Brooke. So you're kind of explaining that my loyalty now is with Jackson. After what he did for me, I will forever be in your debt here. And, tried to work out a path to the end that worked for him and for me as well. So I knew that it was more just working backwards. There was, it wouldn't be off the cards. It wasn't I have to go for Brooke at 7. But it was down the track, but knowing that it would be, I would definitely have my blinkers off. I would have, my spidey senses would be aware that, there is motivation to turn on me. I just didn't expect it at 8, but I can understand it. And you know what? Do I think it makes sense on paper? No. Am I invested in it? Yes. But you've worked so hard to get off the bottom there to get out of that, out of that bottom majority, to then have a shot at seizing power in that 40-60, rock draw when we had the necklace on our side. I don't know. It seemed worth a crack. But I hope that Brooke either goes on to win from here, or I hope that she's out next, because that will help me sleep at night.
Well, you talk about Jackson. We need to get into this dynamic because he says a certain number of things about you both to your face and behind your back. I can't trust this guy. I'm never going
Yeah,
to believe a word that he says. Stop pestering me. But it seems like, from our perspective, you make the winning argument to bring him
yeah.
over. So, talk to me about your sense of your dynamic and how much do you feel you contributed to him deciding to make the move against Ben?
Oh, it was a huge factor. And I knew it. The reason I threw that vote on Brooke, and I know that like, you ate your words in the last couple of podcasts, and
Oh,
thank you
yeah.
very much. That
Delightfully
was
so.
I
Please.
know it was nice. Chappelle, I wish Chappelle had been there because I would have loved to see him like have to do the same thing. He's been quite harsh on me this season, I feel. But on that point with Jackson, it was nice to like I had to throw that vote on Brooke to maintain that relationship, like to open that door to have that there because without that moving forward, there was nothing for us. Like, I knew about Keely's fake idol, I knew about the Keely's real idol. So I had to let lay low, let the girls figure it out, show some like allegiance over to Ben and Jackson to have a shot to move forward with them, to have something, and it paid off. Like, and I worked on him for the 48 hours leading up to it all, and then the 72 to implant some of those ideas and really lead the horse to water. Um, and I chipped away at him like like so much and so hard, but it's like something obviously got through. And at that moment, like it was the desperation, the final pitch at the end. And when he slammed the door in my face and said, I said, "This is show business, baby." And he goes, "No, yeah, and it's my show and it's Brooke." Slammed the door in my face, and then he went back. We had about 10 minutes left at the tribal council. I saw his body language changed, and he looked over at me and he just nodded. And I go, "Holy fuck, it's happening!" Like I couldn't believe. I turned to Keely and go, "Oh my god, it's happening!" And when I saw he went up to vote and he came back down, he was. I knew how hard it is to vote out your best friend,
Yeah.
as I had to do with Harry, and it was really emotional for him. But I saw it happening, and I was so proud, but so upset for him at the same time because it was a lot. But it was nice to have a move that is, it works for Jackson. It's obviously a huge, and it's risky for Jackson at the same time, but it is something in my, my boot week, the end of my 100-day legacy that shows that I've been able to, have some social capital and some good social, I don't know, nous in this game to be able to like pull off something like that. So I'm really proud. Like, if Jackson makes it to the final tribal, like, that's his move. I make it to the final tribal, it's my move. But
Yeah.
something that was purely mine that I managed to get over the line. I was so proud of that. And I tried that something similar in Heroes versus Villains with the pawns to like rattle the cage, and it didn't quite work. So to pull it off this time shows a little bit more maturity and I mean, I had to fail a couple of times to get here, but I got the job done, right?
There's a trial period, that's why you do the testing phase before you do the official rollout of the final product.
I had 100 days of testing phases, Mike. It wasn't easy for me, mate.
Listen, I can think of things that have had a much longer process of marinating there. Well, you mentioned the social capital. You wound up in a really great position multiple times of really being involved with a lot of different people. And that led to some predicaments for you, some real pickles where at one point you were being whispered at by both sides to throw a
Yeah.
fire making challenge to get rid of the other side. And we got to navigate you eventually have to sort of, pay for those social relationships,
Hmm.
betraying people and then facing that, blowback. We saw with Lottie, we saw with Jackson
Yep.
and Ben to a certain extent, Brooke and Keely to a certain extent. Talk to me about managing that. How difficult was it for you to try to maintain these relationships while perhaps knowing that these people are now saying, like, I can't trust a word Simon says. He's dead to me. He's next no matter what.
Yeah. It's very difficult. But it was, it worked really well for me in the first half of the game where it was almost a flawless run for me. Like, I was able to kick those decisions down the road and play from the middle, play both sides and like have good relationships with everyone to, insulate myself and have good protection there. And it was really tough. Like there are always consequences for your actions there. And yeah, I guess it comes with a bit of experience knowing that like you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like you have to pick a side and you have to stand for something. And yes, it can be seen as like wishy-washy when you burn everyone to an extent, but I think it comes be from a considered point of view where it's like as long as you have enough mutual benefit with the people that you're going back towards, that like, there's still something there and it can be justified. Like, I think that's really important. And yeah, it's hard, but I've got people telling me to throw a challenge from from both sides, but like I'm standing up for my own game and I'm going to make a decision where no, I'm going to control the timings of this. I'm going to save my entire tribe, win this fire challenge, save my entire tribe, save Rich, go back again, and then I can make Arsha throw the challenge that she goes out on. Like, that's poetic. Like, and I controlled that in the moment there. And yeah, there's a bit of fallout, but like there's still a bigger fish to fry. There's still something else that's sucking up energy there. So just finding that really fine balance through the game and like threading the eye of the needle, it's difficult. But I think with a bit of maturity and experience, like, you can kind of do that. And, you wake up the next day with a smile on your face, with the right amount of energy, and you just go for it again. And, yeah, like I piss a few people off along the way, just, naturally, as I kind of, do, just by being me and giving it a go and making the most of every moment and winning stuff. But like, it is what it is, and you just have to deal with it as best you can. Have some like mutual benefit and good enough reason, and you go for it. But like, yeah, you can't play from the middle forever. And I'd rather stand for something and do something for my own game as opposed to just sit back and let things happen around me. And I think that's kind of been the nature of everything that I've done over my 100 days.
Well, I'm curious because one of the first, times again you make this stand is when you are part of Beauty and the Beast and you sort of betray this dynamic that you had with Lottie. So talk to me a bit about that. What made you ultimately decide after forming this relationship with Lottie that, now I've heard about was pretty, darn manifested from the first day to then, again, prove your redemption, as you say on the show, and form this alliance to take out her number one?
Yeah, like it just made a lot of sense. Like as soon as we hit that beach, Ash wanted to throw a challenge to take Brooke out, and she just had the blinkers on straight away. And Ash didn't really know it, but she was definitely moving into the leadership position of that, say the original bounty members there. And so seeing her motivation to like throw challenges early when it didn't make sense. We had 6 more challenges until merge. She wanted Brooke gone, the returnees, and I just felt like people were saying they wanted returnees gone, but not you, Simon. So it was a bit like, "Ooh, I don't really like that." So kind of getting ahead there. And she was very much so, she didn't ask for opinions. It was like, hey, like I came up to the conversation. She's like, my first conversation with Arsha on the swap beach was Brooke's going home. I'm like, okay, like, are we going to have a discussion about this? We're going to see how everyone's feeling. It was like straight up there and then. And like, so Loz, Jackson and myself were just left out of that. So it's like, okay, how can I use this information to like, lead these horses to water to get this going and to make this happen? And yeah, it was difficult to then leave Lottie out because she was my number one and I was so close to her because she's an absolute legend. But then it was tough to, I had to make a decision that worked for my game and manage the fallout there because I wasn't going to put anyone else's game before my own. So made a few tough decisions, dealt with the fallout, and made sure I picked up some other friends along the way there. And I was able to have a pretty cool blindside under my belt that like I controlled the timings of when Arsha went, made her throw the challenge and she went home, and it was pretty poetic, and it was a really nice like move that I really felt like I did a lot of work behind the scenes to pull that together, to get there, and like it still was it worked well for everyone, and I was still the one who had to deal with the fallout from Lottie there. I mean, I can go down the rest of that Lottie path if you want, but like it's a long story.
Let's talk a little bit about this. I mean, obviously, well, we could have maybe a much longer story chat after the season here, but I want to talk about this Lottie merge vote, and the Rich vote to a certain extent. It seems like from our perspective, it was like, okay, you are, having this conversation with Keely, you're joining the Beauty and the Beast want Mark out, and you're joining the returnees instead. So talk to me a bit about that, about, again, another way that you had to kind of weigh the various relationships and dynamics you were having and ultimately pick a side and back yourself in that moment.
Yeah. So the context missing here is where we were with, had a really good conversation with Rich kind of as we kind of hit the beach in merge. Rich sat down with Mark, Keely, myself, Rich. And we essentially spoke about, like, Rich and Mark had a great relationship to, was motivated to work together after everything they'd been through there. And then I had a great relationship with Loz, throughout the kind of duration. And Loz was like personally interested in, she wanted to take out Jackson, but she wanted to get back to, like, she wanted to work with Mark at Merge, and she wanted to work with Brooke as well. Like, they had the whole idol swap thing, so it kind of, it made sense. So and then I was investing in a shield strategy. So, and with the returnees, so it made sense to have Mark there. So I had like the people around me, and like couldn't have my cake and eat it too. And it was Lottie who was outside of that. So I could have gone with Lottie against all of this, but then Lottie had told me that, she wanted Mark gone. Like, and Mark was, in all fairness, Mark was sucking so much oxygen out of the game, which was incredible. Like, I couldn't believe it. And it was kind of part of my motivation for, using him as a shield there. But I had to, make my decision at that point in time. And whilst they were still a little bit disgruntled with Jackson, it made sense to just get that monkey off my back there. And it was a really tough vote because I felt like Lottie still would have been in my corner for a while. And I was the one who gained the most from that first vote there. Like, if you look at where the kind of numbers are, Mark wanted hit that beach. Mark wanted Sally out, like, and it made sense for Keely because it cemented my relationship with Keely. But Keely didn't think that I'd actually budge on that. But it's also a good show that I'm willing to, hey, I'm in this with you guys. And Lottie was the one who really could have rallied the troops there very early on. She's just a social powerhouse, and she just got the game as a new player. She was very, very good at it. And we knocked her out, and then Ben just slipped straight into the power vacuum, and they were all kind of motivated from there. So the resistance that was trying to shut down still managed to find a way to come through. But yeah, it was a tough decision to knock Lottie out at that point. But I wasn't going to put anyone's game before my own when I was so motivated to play hard in my third season and to hit that 100-day milestone and go on to win.
Well, let's talk about if that scenario would happen. So let's say you survive, whether it's a rock draw, whether, it ends up people flipping in the revote, what have you. You end up surviving to the final 7. Did you have an ideal final 4, 3, 2 in mind to proceed further? Obviously, Brooke was not going to be in those, but who was?
Look, Brooke definitely would have been there only from a like, I just know that I can't. I need to be. My problem is I need to be taken to the end. In Australia's like, traditional, like, last big peg challenge. Like, I don't win that challenge.
You keep claiming you're not good at endurance, but I've been watching you with these challenges.
Yeah, and look, I've come a long way. Like, my body's changed as a chippy now. Like, as a it used to be an office working bodybuilder. So, like, my body physically has changed, and the work that I do has, like, led me to have success there. But body weight, like large body weight on pegs, just isn't great for me, like, naturally. So, like, I would lose that one to Brooke if she was there, but I would go the distance with her. But then working backwards, I knew that she'd be motivated to kind of take me out. So there was consideration there. No one else I felt like could beat me at any point. Like, I would have happily sat next to Keely because I felt like we'd burnt the same amount of people on the jury to an extent. And then no one else I was, like, really worried about. So I had options. It was just more about who was motivated to take me at the same time. But I was invested in Jackson. Like, I had conversations with Jackson and about going to the end. The night before I got taken out, and we did speak about taking out Brooke at 7 if that was of interest to him, knowing that the night before, like, when he took out Ben, he was like, it has to be Brooke, it has to be Brooke. And then he ended up turning around and saying that, telling Brooke that, so that kind of probably didn't help either. But then Cameron, like, I never gave up hope on Cameron. Like, I knew how much he wanted me out, he wanted returnees out, and I'd broken his trust multiple times, but I just never given up hope with him. You just can't. Like, I kept trying. We've been together the entire duration of the game, and I knew he had motivate. Like, you can see how motivated he is for a big move, to have something under his belt. So I kept trying, and I wanted to, in some form have him there with me. But yeah, I just felt like the relationship had sailed with Loz at the same time. So it was like trying to find a balance, but I'd overstayed my welcome, Mike. Like, I had very much so, probably didn't deserve to be around for much more of that kind of merge. I feel like merge period there when like there was so much. The returnees were just frustrating the hell out of everyone after pulling the pants down of the returning players, and they tried to split votes and it didn't go their way. They tried to
They
not
they
split
didn't
votes.
split votes and it didn't go their way.
Oh my God, like like pretty funny, but like yeah, it was more a day by day for me, just given the threat level that I kind of had, and like no one wants to keep around someone winning that many challenges. So I would love to play this game without the challenges to an extent, where it's like,
Wow.
well, I love it and it holds a very special place in my heart, but like let's remove that physical element to see how I can actually play socially and strategically. How does someone like my archetype and physicality get through this point of the game on their own 2 feet without the challenges?
Well, last thing I want to ask is bring it full circle back to reflection for you, because I didn't even realize this until I was looking through sort of your own history with the show. You have been on like almost every other year for Australian Survivor.
Yeah,
You
mate.
were on Brains versus Brawn, skip a year, Heroes versus Villains, skip 2 years. Now you're on Redemption. And like you said, it seems like right now you're hanging up your snuffed cap for good. So
Yeah.
how do you look back on what the past 5 years of your life have been? I know that you have gone through so much off
Mm.
camera, but considering what we've seen of you on camera and the various forms of Simon 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, how do you look back on these life-changing metamorphoses that you've experienced?
Oh, mate, it's a lot. Like to go through a once in a lifetime opportunity 3 times, like it's pretty special. And I said if I never won this game, I'd love to leave a mark or a legacy in some kind of way. And I didn't think I'd do it in the way that I had, but it's been so much fun. Looking back, it's one full of gratitude. Like I'm so stoked for the opportunity to play in the first place and to yeah, to come back 3 times, it's incredible. And like 100 days, like they haven't been easy for me. Like
Yeah.
I haven't, I never really cruised through. I had maybe my heroes, the heroes tribe together on the Heroes versus Villains. That was a pretty good time. And then yeah, maybe like when you with the Beauty and the Beast, like that was a good time as well. But they were probably the only periods that were straightforward for me. But even then, I was potentially still in a difficult spot. So like I've it hasn't been hard. I haven't had it easy, but to get there and to do it my own way and to fumble through it and to like yeah, it's I'm 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 pretty happy and just so grateful of the opportunity and what it's kind of meant and the support from the fans. And if I had got voted out on day 10 in Brains v Brawn when like I went up against Benny in a
Yeah.
split vote, and then I think it was Shannon ended up flipping to save me, like my journey could have ended there. And to go on and to have the storyline that I've had, and if it had ended halfway through Heroes versus Villains or the night that the Epic Tribal Council, like it would have been a very different Simon. So I'm so grateful to be able to show another side of the Simon that there always was there, but like
Yeah.
with a bit more context over a bit more time. You can't really hide the person that I was and has always been. And it's just so much fun. So to all the fans, I'd like to think that every day that I played, that I made the most of every single moment because I knew that my spot out there could have been one of you. So I tried to really make the most of that.
Yeah, that's what the thing. Whether it's one day or 100, what matters is what you do with them, and what you were able to do with them across 3 seasons was just absolutely incredible from an entertainment perspective. And like you talked about as well, like your absolute tenacity, Simon. Like
Yeah.
honestly, I will be cards up here. I think is incredibly admirable. I think both on screen and off screen, you have dealt with a lot of shit that's been thrown your way.
Yeah.
They did a whole opening about it. But I think the fact that you were able to go through this with a smile, to be able to mock yourself for your mistakes, but also be able to revel in your victories. I think it speaks to the type of person that you are, and I'm so happy that we had the pleasure of getting to see who you are. It feels like, as you mentioned, this version of yourself was the version of who you are.
Mm.
And it was nothing short of wonderful. So obviously, listen, I wish that you won 4 more challenges, that we saw you at the end, that you took home the win here. But regardless, I relish any time I get with Simon Mee on our screens. And this
Oh,
is,
thank you, Mike.
very, very much a continuation of that as well. I will not be presumptuous. I would love to have a longer chat at the end after this is all said and done, if you're
Yeah, I'd
willing to
love
have
to.
me.
Yeah.
But I right now I'm just so elated that we got the chance to see you again. And I think especially to go through an experience this time around that made you sort of come to this sense of finality, both with
Yeah.
the show, with the season, and with again a very important phase of your life. I think
Mm-mm.
that's incredibly beautiful and poetic. So thank you for waxing poetic about your time on this season, Simon. We'll have a longer again discourse about everything that went down because again,
Yeah.
you did a lot. As you said, you filled those 100+ days. But regardless, I really relish the time we had to chat right now.
Oh, mate, thank you so much for your kind words. And thanks to everyone in the rap community. In particular, shout out to Shan. She's
Yeah.
been so fantastic for, making this journey an incredible one for me. So yeah, thank you very much.
Of course. Well, I will let you get back to the family. I hope everything is going well with them and looking forward to, hopefully talking in a few weeks' time. But otherwise, thank you so much again, Simon. Truly a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Mike.
Yep. You
See you,
have a good one,
legend.
man. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.